So in today's video, I'm going to discuss about how to go about doing a PhD. So basically, I am talking about a situation where you have got admission to one of the Indian Institute of Technologies or similar institutions in India, and you want to do a PhD program. And basically, this particular PhD program is different from that in different countries and so on, and it has certain peculiar characteristics which I will discuss further in this video. So I would say the most important issue when you do a PhD is to have a good selection of a PhD supervisor. So this probably is the most important decision which you have to make in your life as a research student and as a researcher. And this is very important because if you choose a research supervisor who does not match with your own personality and your personal philosophies, then it would be very difficult for you to continue your PhD program and complete your degree. So this is something which is very important. So I'll now give you a few things to keep in mind when you are selecting a PhD supervisor. The first thing is you need to find out if this person's research philosophy matches with your research philosophy and the plan you have for your PhD degree. So for example, if this person is an experimentalist and you are somebody who prefers computational work, then there is going to be a mismatch straight away. If this person is a researcher who likes to do a lot of different mathematical theories, and you are somebody who likes to work in the lab, then again there is a dissonance between this person and you. So again, this is going to come back later to give you problems. So the first thing to keep in mind is there should be a match between the broad context of the research problem which you are trying to do, as to whether you want to do a mathematical problem, you want to do a computational problem, you want to do an experimental problem, and so on. Now, of course, I have presumed here that you have narrowed down your particular field of research. So maybe it is fluid mechanics or solid mechanics or heat transfer or machine learning or database or something like that. So again, within this particular context, you need to find out who are the different people in the field who work at that particular university. And then you need to find out something more about these people in terms of their research background, their research proclivity, and so on. And the next part is that you need to find out from senior students at the university or friends whom you know about this particular person and his personality and his work philosophy and things like that. So these are very important because it becomes important as a researcher, because you are going to spend a lot of time in the lab of this particular person and your philosophy must gel with the philosophy of this person. So to give you an example, if you are somebody who likes a lot of freedom and you get a supervisor who does a lot of micromanagement and he or she wants you to have 3 to 4 weekly meetings to report your progress, then this will not work out very well for you if you plan to spend 4 to 5 years in this particular university. Similarly, if you are a person who needs a lot of supervision in terms of regular doses of motivation to bolster your confidence and so on, or who needs a lot of help in terms of writing your papers and making your presentations and planning out your literature survey, then you actually want a supervisor who does a lot of micromanagement, and you would benefit from a supervisor who holds 3 to 4 meetings a week and has in-depth discussions with his or her students. And so you need to keep this in mind when you are selecting your PhD supervisor. So now let us assume you have selected your PhD supervisor. Then the next thing which you need to do is you need to do a selection of courses in the department and in some different departments, and these list of courses or this selection of courses is typically known as the research training program for the PhD student. So again, this particular program should be created so that it provides all the necessary background which is required to study the literature in the field. And so if you are studying a subject such as machine learning, then this may cover various courses in machine learning as well as mathematics and some different courses and so on. So the aim of these courses is to make sure that you have all the background in terms of the mathematics, the notational things, as well as the theories which are required to basically read the papers in this field. Now, once you have done this research training program, you can start on your literature survey, and in consultation with your supervisor, you can demarcate the particular problem you are trying to do. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that various institutions permit a PhD student to take very few courses, but it is also possible to take a certain maximum number of courses at most universities. So I would suggest you take the maximum number of courses which are permitted in your university. So these may be 6 courses or 10 courses. And the reason is that most people benefit a lot by taking courses at the graduate level. So though they may have training at the UG level on different courses, these courses are typically taught in a simplistic manner. And when you go to a top rated university, it is useful to take some of these courses once again, and also to take several more courses, and if possible to do a minor in a different field such as mathematics or computer science or material science or something like that. Not only this helps you to become a better researcher because you can then think more in terms of multidisciplinary problems, but it also helps you become more marketable in terms of postdoc as well as job situations. Now, once you have completed all these courses, most universities would have a comprehensive exam. So this comprehensive exam requires you to create a syllabus, and then you are asked questions on this syllabus which is related to the research training program. And you also need to create a research proposal and make a presentation to a committee of a few professors as to what is the particular research problem which you are going to do, how you are going to do it, and maybe a few sample results if you have obtained them at this point. So again, this comprehensive exam is a very good place where you can prepare for the entire research training program. And I would suggest that take this preparation very seriously, take a month off and study all the books in the field so that you become a master of these particular subjects, because this may be the first and last time, or at least the last time, which you get to read these textbooks and this kind of material to go for a certain setting where you are asked questions on that particular subject. So if your field is solid mechanics, this is your chance to read all the books on mechanics of materials, solid mechanics, structures and so on, so that you can make a good impact on this particular committee. Now, once your comprehensive exam is through and if you have cleared this exam, then your problem is defined in terms of the research proposal, and then you can continue to do work in this particular problem. So you will then do all the sub problems which you have laid out in your research proposal. So these may involve modeling, they may involve simulation, they may involve experiments, numerical experiments and so on. And then a couple of years will probably go by in doing these kind of things. Now, at many universities and institutions, there is a committee of professors who guides this PhD student. So while the primary responsibility of guiding the student is with the PhD supervisor, this committee is also there to essentially demarcate the boundaries of the problem, and they can also help you in getting some new concepts as far as your PhD problem is concerned. And one good thing is that these committee members may give you some different leads into your problem, and they can also help you in doing research, and in fact may also become co-writers of some of the papers which you have. Now, once you have all these things set up, then the focus should turn towards publications. And what I suggest is you try to write a few journal papers and maybe one conference paper, and if possible more conference papers. So now you may get some funding for going to conferences from your institution or from different government bodies as well as some foundations. And so I would suggest that you try to go to one major world conference in your field, and this will help you to get a good background in terms of your field and to learn a lot of things which are going on in the field and which may be outside your immediate PhD problem, but it may be of great use to you to shape your vision in the field. So in the conference, I would encourage you to go to different talks, to also go to all the plenary and keynote talks in the field so that you can see which way your field is going. Now, one more thing to keep in mind is if you are presenting a conference paper, don't spend all your time in just preparing for your own presentation and then presenting your paper and then kind of loitering around the conference or in the city. Make sure that you use all the conference time to go to the various sessions and attend these talks. So again, going to conferences is a great privilege for a PhD student, and they should use it as much as possible. Now, once you have done this conference task, you should also keep in mind that conferences are important in terms of networking, getting to know people, getting to know the broad aspect of the field. But you must keep your focus in terms of journal publication and ensure that you write 3 to 5 papers during your PhD. So at least try to write one journal paper before you complete your PhD, because that will be greatly beneficial for you in terms of getting jobs and postdoc. And it will also help in your PhD thesis defense if they see that you have published one particular journal paper in the field. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind is that you can write a curriculum vitae in the second or third year of your PhD, and this gives a good background which you can use to see the growth of your research as you go through time. So at that point, you may not have a very good CV, but you know exactly what is needed in terms of filling in the blanks, in terms of the number of publications you need to publish, the journals which you need to publish in. Maybe you can get a small grant for doing some research work, or maybe you can go for certain prizes or certain prizes reserved for young scientists or young students. And these will particularly help you to cement your CV for further growth. The second thing is that at the end of your second or third year, you should try to write out a table of content for your thesis. And this is helpful in terms of setting a direction towards your thesis, and also in ensuring that you have made the first step toward the path of writing a thesis. And generally what happens is that this first step is the most difficult step. And once you have written this, you can share it with your PhD supervisor, and then you can come to a certain discussion and you can come to a conclusion as to the suitability of this particular table of content. And this will help you in your progress towards your research, and it will also become a template which you can use for your further research. I would also say that you can start writing your thesis at the end of the third year or fourth year or so on, and the first chapters, which are introduction, can be written at this stage, and this will also give you a good background in terms of the subject and ensure that the literature survey you have written is captured in this particular document. Now, typically what happens in a PhD in many countries is that you send the PhD thesis to certain people who then peruse this thesis and give their view as to the suitability of this thesis for a PhD degree. So this is what happens in many of these Indian institutions. And so you typically have to give the names of a few advisors in your own country and a few people in the outside world who are experts in the particular field. So again, this is where a literature survey helps you and your supervisor in figuring out who are the experts in the field, because nowadays the research fields are very narrow, and therefore you need to do a literature survey to find out exactly who are the professors and scientists who are in the field. So again, typically give people who are working at universities or at research centers, and make sure that all these people have a PhD degree, because if they are setting out to review a PhD thesis, then they should have a PhD degree at this point. Now, one more thing is that you should make sure that you cite all the papers properly. You do a proper literature survey, because when you are sending the thesis out for review, one of the silliest mistakes to make is to not cover the literature in the field properly, and that is something which people find out as soon as they look at your thesis if they are experts in the field. And so this is a broad outline of the PhD degree. And then what happens is that once the reviews come back from these people, they can say that your thesis is excellent, there are no changes to the thesis, that's the best possible scenario. The second case is there may be some minor changes to the thesis, and that sometimes happens. And in most cases, what you get is a kind of major revision where you have to make several changes in the thesis, and you may have to change the writing, you may have to add some figures, you may have to give some explanations about some of the statements you have made in your results and discussions. Sometimes people may point out that you have missed out some references and you may need to include these. And in some cases, a person may be very thorough in his review and they may in fact point out various issues in terms of your font sizes of your figures and the style you have used in your reference section and so on, and then you have to make all these changes for the final version of the thesis. Now there are some cases where the thesis may actually be turned down by the person to whom it goes, and in this case typically the university may send it out to one more person to then see the reviews from three people, and then the decision is made based on the majority of the people involved and their comments, and also the dean can take a look at that particular scenario and give his or her view on that thesis. So these kind of things can take place. So one of the ways to prevent something like this from happening is to have a couple of journal publications by the time you have submitted your thesis, in which case it is very likely that your thesis will have a positive response from the people who are reviewing the thesis, because it has also been vetted by some of these researchers before, and there has been some level of scrutiny of the thesis which is out there in the international community. Now once you have completed all these requirements and the dean and the institute clears your thesis, then there is a thesis exam or a thesis defense, and here the people essentially ask you various questions on your thesis problem. So you are expected to make a presentation of about 45 minutes or so, and in this presentation you discuss the work in the thesis, and at the end of it you are also supposed to explain all the responses you have given to the questions which have been raised by the people who examined your thesis. And at this point one of the people is typically called, and it may be both the people who have reviewed your thesis, and this could be done both in a normal setting in terms of people being paid the airfare and flown in, or it could be also done on some web-based tools such as Team or Skype or Zoom. So nowadays the tendency is more toward using these web-based tools because it is simple as well as much less expensive. And so once you have cleared this particular exam, at the end of it, if you pass this exam, your supervisor congratulates you and tells you that you can use the title of doctor, and now you have completed your PhD. So typically this process can take from 3 to 5 years, but it's not a process which has a closed end point. There are people who take 6 years, 7 years, and at least I know one case where a person took more than 10 years to complete a PhD thesis, but that is very rare. The standard deviation is probably 1 to 2 years, with the mean being about 4.5 to 5 years. So try to shoot for these lower numbers and don't try to procrastinate and get into the long duration PhD thesis bandwagon, because that can be negative as far as your career is concerned. So now once you have completed your PhD thesis, after some point you will get the degree in the commencement or convocation, and at that time you will be fully certified as a PhD and you can call yourself a doctor. Now one more thing to keep in mind is that if you are going for a job search, then you should start at some point before you have completed the PhD. So whether you are going for a postdoctoral position or you are going for a company job or a university job, give yourself some time and start preparing your resume and going for job positions before your PhD is completed. So that is something which will help you a lot in terms of your future career and so on. And also these various people whom you have interacted with, such as the people who have reviewed your thesis, are also prospective sources of references for you, as are the committee members who are there in your department and who have helped in guiding your thesis forward. You also remember to take a few courses outside your department so that you also have these people whom you can go to as prospective referees for your jobs and postdoctoral situations later when you go for these kind of positions. So these were some ideas I had today about the process of doing a PhD thesis at typical institutions. And I hope this video was useful for you. And if it was useful, stay tuned to my channel and share my video with different people. Thank you very much.